For years, tensions have simmered between Israel and Iran. When Hamas launched its terrorist attack on Israel in October 2023, those simmering tensions hit their boiling point. Now they've exploded. Israel just hit Iran hard. The world may be on the brink of a war that could embroil the entire Middle East. Israel's Operation Rising Lion has just wiped out Iran's nuclear program, along with several of the country's most prominent officials. The world is holding its breath while asking the key question, what happens next? That question will be addressed later in the video. But first, the War Zone, or TWZ, was among the many outlets to provide an initial report on Israel's shocking strike against Iran. On June 13, it quoted an anonymous Israeli official who simply stated, "The attack has just begun in Iran. We are in an emergency situation all over the country." The statement seemed to confirm an earlier June 13 report by Axios that Israel's Air Force had conducted a strike against Iran starting on June 12. At the time, nobody knew what Israel was targeting. Now the details are starting to pour in. TWZ says that Israel initially stayed quiet about its Iran attack, likely because the strike was still in progress and it didn't want to give anything away. However, that changed at 8:51 p.m. Eastern Time when the Israel Defense Force, or IDF, released a statement that it had conducted what it called a preemptive precise strike against Iran's nuclear facilities and some of the country's leading officials. A short while ago, following the directive of the political echelon, the IDF launched a preemptive, precise, combined offensive based on high-quality intelligence to strike Iran's nuclear program, and in response to the Iranian regime's ongoing aggression against Israel, the statement said. Dozens of IAF jets completed the first stage that included strikes on dozens of military targets, including nuclear targets in different areas of Iran. The IDF statement goes on to explain that Israel conducted the strike because the Iranian regime has been waging a direct and indirect campaign of terror against the state of Israel by funding and directing terrorist activities via its proxies across the Middle East, while advancing toward obtaining a nuclear weapon. The IDF also claims that Iran has made it a stated objective to destroy the state of Israel. The IDF's reasoning is clear. It's claiming that it had to hit Iran hard now for several reasons. The IDF suggests that Iran has been preparing to attack Israel directly and that the strike also serves as revenge for Iran's funding of proxy organizations such as Hamas, and the most direct action Israel can take to prevent Iran from building a nuclear weapon that could threaten Israel. So, what did Israel hit? The Natanz nuclear facility was one of the first confirmed targets. The Clash Report X account broke that news, along with sharing an 18-second video that appeared to show smoke streaming from the flaming wreckage of the site. The site is part of Iran's nuclear program and is protected by a concrete shield that the Times of Israel says is about 25 feet thick. Public knowledge of the site dates back to 2002, which is known to contain centrifuges that are buried up to 164 feet underground. That all makes it an obvious target for Israel if the IDF wants to take out Iran's budding nuclear capabilities. But Natanz was far from the only site that Israel hit in Operation Rising Lion. By 9:30 p.m, TWZ was also reporting on strikes against the city of Piranshahr. These were different from the earlier strikes. Where Natanz is a nuclear facility, Piranshahr is a city that lies in West Azerbaijan, close to the Iraqi border. The Thomas van Linger X account shared an initial picture that seemed to show smoke rising from a building Israel struck with its airstrike. A later post from the same account came with a video reporting to show a lot of secondary explosions at a targeted site in the city. Van Linger speculated that Israel may have struck Piranshahr because it was home to an Iranian ammunition depot. Another target down. Other reports tell us that Iran's capital of Tehran hasn't escaped the IDF's wrath. The OSINT Defender X account reports that search and rescue operations are already underway at multiple locations across Tehran, suggesting that Israel hit Iran's capital city hard. It shares footage of an unspecified building in the city that is being examined by a crew of rescue workers. TWZ also reports that Iran's state press is reporting that a fire is raging either near or at the Tehran headquarters of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC. These initial strikes against Tehran only seem to be the beginning. OSINT Defender shared footage in the early hours of June 13, suggesting that Israel had launched a secondary wave of strikes against the city, which Iran responded to with air defense activity. The devastating picture Israel painted with Rising Lion is becoming clearer. Yes, this was a precise operation in terms of what Israel hit, but it wasn't an operation in which Israel focused on a single site. It hit multiple locations in Iran, all within minutes or hours of one another, in a concerted series of aerial strikes designed to take out some of the country's key nuclear and military facilities. And the news gets worse for Iran. There are suggestions that the attack was made possible both because of Israel putting boots on the ground in Iran and due to Iran's air defenses failing. The Status 6 X account seems to confirm that Israel had people operating on the inside, quoting an unnamed Israeli official as stating, "Alongside extensive strikes by the Israeli Air Force, the Mossad led a series of covert counter-terrorism operations deep inside Iran. These operations were designed to damage Iran's strategic missile array and air defense capabilities." That suggests Rising Lion was no ordinary airstrike. Israel must have been planning it for weeks, perhaps even months, if it has managed to sneak Mossad agents into Iran ahead of the attack. The presence of those agents also shows why Israel was able to cause so much damage, with Iran seemingly unable to respond. The official is suggesting that Mossad agents ran sabotage operations to take out Iran's air defenses in key locations, creating the openings the IDF needed to rain missiles and bombs down on several key Iranian targets. And by target, that word doesn't just mean a nuclear facility, an ammunition depot, and some buildings in Tehran. Israel was going after people too. TWZ reports that the strikes on Tehran, in particular, focused on key personnel within Iran's military. It says that the Chief of Staff of the Iranian Armed Forces, Major General Mohammad Bagheri, is among those who've been killed in Israel's strikes. The New York Times confirmed this report, adding that Israel managed to take out the man who's the second highest commander of Iran's armed forces after the country's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And Bagheri was just the start. The New York Times also says that Israel's strikes took out General Hossein Salami, who's the chief of Iran's IRGC. This may explain the fire scene at the IRGC headquarters. Israel may have hit that building to get at Salami, allowing it to take out two of the key figures in Iran's military. General Gholam Ali Rashid, who served as the deputy commander-in-chief of Iran's armed forces, has also been killed by the strikes. Outside of military personnel, Israel also targeted some of the most important nuclear scientists in Iran. Mohammad Mehdi Taranchi, who was a theoretical physicist and the president of the Islamic Azad University in Tehran, now lies dead. So too does Fariadun Abbasi, who was the former head of Iran's Atomic Energy Organization. Clash Report also says that Israel targeted Ali Shamkhani with its strikes. He was the head of Iran's nuclear program and a trusted advisor to Khamenei. For a while, nobody knew if Shamkhani had been killed, though his residence was reported as being struck. TWC even reported that Shamkhani was still alive. However, CNN was among the first to confirm that he had also passed away. There was one bright spot for Iran. Though Israel took out some of the country's most important military and nuclear minds, it didn't manage to kill Ali Khamenei himself. He's confirmed to still be alive. That's likely intentional. Taking out military officers and nuclear physicists is one thing. Killing a country's leader on his own soil is tantamount to a full-blown declaration of war and would force Iran into a drastic response. More on that later. What's unfolding here appears to be a clear decapitation strategy that accompanied Israel's attacks against some of Iran's key nuclear facilities and military bases. In the space of 24 hours, at least 6 of Iran's most important military and nuclear minds are dead, with the idea being that their loss will create chaos in the structures of the organizations they ran. Khamenei has just lost some of his most trusted advisors. He's also lost some of the brightest minds in his country, which brings Iran's nuclear program screeching to a halt. This is massive, and it leads to the obvious question: why did Israel do this? The answer has already been hinted at, as the IDF's initial statement explained that it struck preemptively both due to Iran waging a proxy war against Israel and the country's steadfast refusal to halt its nuclear weapons program. It's the latter of these two issues that seems to be the most important, at least in the IDF's collective mind. At least that's the impression given from an IDF statement published to X in the wake of the initial strikes. Recent intelligence shows Iran is nearing the point of no return in its race toward a nuclear weapon, the statement reads. The regime is producing thousands of kilograms of enriched uranium alongside decentralized and fortified enrichment compounds in underground fortified sites. This program has accelerated significantly in recent months, bringing the regime significantly closer to obtaining a nuclear weapon. That's something Israel couldn't afford to allow Iran to do. Iran with a nuclear weapon becomes a country that is far more able to threaten Israel and dictate the direction of Middle Eastern geopolitics. The state of Israel has been left with no choice, the IDF statement concludes. The IDF has the obligation to act in defense of the civilians of Israel and will continue to do so. While commentators will surely argue over just how urgent Israel's strike on Iran actually was in the coming days, there's no arguing with the basic point that Iran has been coming closer to building a nuclear weapon. In March, Iran Watch published a timetable in which it estimated how long it would take Iran to build a nuclear weapon. It points out that Iran doesn't yet have weapons-grade uranium, which is uranium that has been enriched to 90% or higher in the isotope U-235. But it's close, and it could start enriching to 90% at any point it wants. Iran Watch says that Iran has up to 593 pounds of uranium enriched to 60% of the U-235 isotope. That's enough for between 5 and 8 nuclear weapons. Iran could hit the 90% mark with that stockpile in about 2 weeks if it decided to go full bore into producing a nuke. The Council on Foreign Relations also published an article on June 12 that explored Iran's nuclear capabilities. It confirms that Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons yet, but it also adds that Western analysts say the country has the knowledge and infrastructure to produce a nuclear weapon in fairly short order should its leaders decide to do so. The implication here is that it was just a matter of time before Iran built a nuclear warhead. The only thing that seemed to be stopping it was knowing how much of an international backlash doing so would create. So, will Iran allow the backlash to hold it back after Operation Rising Lion? Only time will tell. Israel may have also been prompted into action by a move that Iran made on June 13, hours before Israel's attack. On May 31st, the UN's nuclear watchdog reported that Iran had amassed around 900 pounds of uranium enriched to 60%. That represented a 294.9 pound increase since the watchdog's last visit to the country in February, and it shows that Iran had no intention of complying with any of the Vienna-based International Atomic Energy Agency rules that are supposed to limit the country's uranium enrichment. The UN censured Iran for the violation. Iran responded by announcing on June 13 its intention to build a third uranium enrichment site. Just a couple of hours later, the Israeli bombs started falling over Iran. By this point, it seems clear that Israel is at least genuine in its claim that it attacked Iran over the nuclear threat the country poses. That claim is backed up by numerous organizations that have warned against Iran's uranium enrichment activities. Iran didn't help its case by so openly defying the UN with its announcement of a new enrichment center. Israel sees what it did from June 12 into June 13 as a necessity to take out Iran's nuclear program before it could take that final step toward enriching its uranium to the 90% needed to build a nuclear warhead. All of this leads to the obvious question: what happens next? From Israel's perspective, what happened on June 13 is just the start. That's according to the country's Chief of General Staff, Eyal Zamir, who TWZ reports as saying, "Civilians of Israel, these are decisive days. We're currently at the start of a new phase in the operation to secure our future." Zamir added that Israel had been preparing Operation Rising Lion for a long time, and he called on the people of Israel to support the country's troops as the operation moves into its next phase. "Unlike the past, we face an enemy as a nation and regional power, with an army like no other. Beyond the technology, operational means and methods, we inhibit an additional unique element, the Zionist and Jewish spirit that beats within us." That certainly sounds like Israel isn't finished yet. And according to the Ragip Soilu X account, Israel's Channel 12 has confirmed that Israel's military attacks are going to continue for another 2 weeks. Whether those strikes will be as intense as those already seen remains to be seen. But make no mistake, this wasn't a one-off. In the coming days, Israel is expected to attack Iran again and again. Iran, of course, isn't taking any of this lying down. According to the Jerusalem Post, an anonymous Iranian official said, "The response to the Israeli attack will be harsh and decisive," while adding that Iran's retaliation to the strike was being discussed at the highest level. That response seems to have come at around 1:15 AM Eastern Time. The AFP news agency reported on X that Iran has launched around 100 drones toward Israel. The same outlet says that Israel was working to intercept those drones. TWZ adds that Israel is doing this alone. In the past, the US and other allied forces have worked with Israel to nullify incoming drones. Not this time. And that brings us to the US response to what Israel just did with Operation Rising Lion. It would be easy to assume that the US may have helped Israel to conduct its series of airstrikes. After all, it was only back in April that Reuters reported on Donald Trump telling Iran that there will be all hell to pay if it didn't abandon its nuclear program and started negotiating with the US. Those threats came amidst a massive US bombing campaign against the Houthis in Yemen that was designed to decapitate one of the most prominent Iranian proxies operating in the Middle East. However, that assumption would be wrong. The US claims it had nothing to do with Operation Rising Lion. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has already come out to try and distance the US from Israel's latest act. "We're not involved in strikes against Iran, and our top priority is protecting American forces in the region," Rubio said. "Let me be clear, Iran should not target US interests or personnel." While the statement was phrased as a warning, it's clear that the US is trying to show Iran that it has been working behind its back to help Israel as nuclear negotiations are ongoing. That means it's also unclear what, if anything, the US knew about Rising Lion before it happened. According to the BBC, Israel has advised the US that the strike was necessary for Israel's defense. Whether that advice came before or after Rising Lion started isn't known. US President Donald Trump is unlikely to be happy. Just hours before Israel struck Iran, the BBC says that Trump warned that any military operation conducted against Iran now would blow the US attempts to negotiate a nuclear deal. "As long as I think there'll be an agreement, I don't want them going in," Trump said. However, he also suggested that an Israeli strike was imminent, adding that it looks like something could well happen. That suggests the US had an inkling about Israel's plans. But now that Rising Lion is in full force, it seems like the US doesn't want to get involved. That's likely why it didn't help Israel to fend off Iran's 100+ drones. Doing so could have been seen by Iran as a form of approval for Israel's strike, which is counter to what the US is trying to achieve in Iran. Instead, The Guardian says, Rising Lion simply shows that Trump isn't able to restrain Israel's leader, Benjamin Netanyahu. It says that Rising Lion has almost certainly scuttled Trump's efforts to negotiate a deal with Iran that would prevent the country from seeking a nuclear weapon. The Guardian also suggests that Israel's attack will force an Iranian retaliation, which it has, and could develop into a larger war between Israel and Iran. Trump doesn't want that, but at this point, he may be powerless to stop it. And it's in this state of geopolitical limbo that the entire Middle East sits right now. Israel and Iran aren't officially at war yet. Israel has made plenty of proclamations about how Rising Lion is going to continue over the next few days, meaning it's likely to target more nuclear sites and key Iranian officials. Iran has retaliated with a drone strike. The two countries are standing on the cliff edge of war, but neither has teetered over that edge so far. However, this is a developing situation. With strikes against Iran ongoing and tensions raised higher than ever before, an official declaration of war may come in the coming days. If that happens, the Middle East will change forever, and the US, along with Israel's other allies, will be left with hard choices to make about whether it supports Israel in whatever comes next. The reality is that the warning signs for Rising Lion were already in place. Just hours before Israel attacked Iran, we published a video examining the rising tensions between the two nations that have led us up to this point. Check out that video if you'd like to learn more about everything that led to Rising Lion. And if you enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe to The Military Show for more up-to-date coverage of the latest developments in what may soon become a war between Iran and Israel.